There is a monastery I once visited, hidden in the mountains of northern Japan, where the monks began every single morning not with prayer, not with meditation, but with their hands in the earth. They moved through a garden so quiet you could hear the dew falling from the leaves of mugwort and mint, their fingers pressing gently into the soil, as though listening to something the rest of the world had long forgotten how to hear. I stood at the edge of that garden in the pale grey light before sunrise, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Not dramatically, not like a revelation crashing down from the sky, but softly, the way a window opens in a room that has been closed for too long. That morning changed the way I understood healing. That morning showed me that the Buddha was not only a teacher who sat beneath a tree. He was a man who understood that the tree itself was teaching. Welcome to this sanctuary. If you have found your way here, something in you is already reaching toward what these ancient monks knew. Something in you is tired of looking for peace in places that have none to give. To continue healing your body and soul through these ancient teachings, I invite you to join our path by subscribing to this sanctuary. Let this place become a garden you return to, a place where something in you is allowed to breathe slowly and begin again. The Buddha was born into a world filled with suffering, and his response was not to build walls against that suffering, but to walk through forests, to sit with the earth, to notice what grew wild and purposeful all around him. The Pali word for medicine and the Pali word for teaching share the same root energy in traditional Buddhist understanding. Osada, the ancient term for healing herbs, was considered not merely a remedy for the body, but a bridge between the physical world and the deeper truth of impermanence. Every plant that grew along the forest paths where the Buddha walked was understood to be alive in a way that demanded reverence, not because plants had souls in the way humans imagine souls, but because they participated in the same great web of interdependence, the same flowing river of cause and effect that connects all living things. The first insight I want to offer you today is this: healing has always been a practice of attention. Before any herb can help you, before any root or flower or bark can do its quiet work inside your body, you must first slow down enough to notice it exists. This is where Buddhism and the plant world meet at the very root. Both require presence. Both require you to stop moving long enough to feel what is actually happening inside you. In the monastery garden I described, the monks did not rush through their morning tending. They moved with a quality of attention that I can only describe as devotional. When a monk lifted a sprig of holy basil, he did not simply pick it. He paused. He looked at it. He seemed to acknowledge it the way you might acknowledge a teacher before entering a classroom. That moment of acknowledgement was itself a form of healing, because it interrupted the relentless forward motion of the thinking mind and returned the monk, returned all of us watching him to the present. The second insight is about the nature of bitterness and how it heals. Many of the most powerful medicinal plants are bitter. Dandelion root, wormwood, gentian, andrographis. They are bitter in a way that makes the face contract, the tongue recoil, the body signal its resistance. And yet these bitter plants are among the most profound healers in traditional medicine systems across Asia, across the Himalayan plateau, across the monasteries of Tibet and China, where monks have used them for centuries to strengthen digestion, to clear the liver, to purify the blood. There is a Zen teaching that says the medicine that heals is often the one that does not taste like medicine, But I would go further and say, the medicine that heals most deeply is often the one that asks something of you. Bitterness in Buddhism is not the opposite of joy. It is a doorway into a more honest relationship with reality. When you can sit with bitterness, when you can allow something that does not comfort you to still nourish you, you are practicing one of the deepest teachings of the Dharma. You are practicing acceptance without sweetening. Now let yourself take a breath, a slow one through the nose, allowing your belly to soften as the air moves in. Hold it gently for just a moment at the top, and then release it as though you are setting something down that you have been carrying for too long. Do this again. Let the exhale be longer than the inhale. This is the body beginning to remember that it knows how to heal. This is the nervous system, your ancient animal nervous system, responding to permission. The third insight comes from the story of Jivaka, the physician of the Buddha himself. Jivaka was trained in the ancient city of Taxila, one of the greatest centers of medical learning in the ancient world. And when he completed his training, his teacher gave him a final examination that no textbook could have prepared him for. The teacher sent Jivaka out into the surrounding countryside and told him to return with any plant that had no medicinal use whatsoever. Jivaka walked for days. He examined every root, every leaf, every flowering weed and climbing vine. He returned empty-handed. He told his teacher, "I could not find a single plant without healing properties. Everything I looked at, everything I touched, had a use." His teacher smiled and told him, "Now you are ready to be a healer." This story has been told in Buddhist communities for over 2,000 years, and what it offers us is revolutionary. It suggests that the healing we seek is not hidden in some rare and inaccessible place. It is everywhere. It is in the weeds pushing through the cracks of the sidewalk. It is in the cup of chamomile you almost did not make for yourself last night. It is in the moment of stillness before you reach for your phone in the morning. Healing is everywhere. The practice is learning to recognize it. The fourth insight is about roots. Every traditional healing system that has grown up alongside Buddhist philosophy, from Ayurveda to Tibetan medicine, to the Chinese medicine that traveled through the monasteries of the Tang dynasty, understands the root as the seat of power, the part of the plant that reaches deepest, that holds longest, that stores the most concentrated vitality. Ashwagandha root, valerian root, astragalus root, ginseng root. These are not gentle surface remedies. They work at depth, slowly, over time, the way real transformation works. Buddhism teaches us the same thing about our own practice. The surface changes, the moments of sudden insight and emotional release. These are beautiful, but they are not the whole story. What changes you permanently is the root work, the daily sitting, the returning to the breath when you have lost it again and again without drama, the willingness to tend what grows underground, in the dark, where no one sees it, because you trust that it is alive and moving toward light. When you take an adaptogenic root herb in the mornings, when you stir that earthy powder into warm water and drink it slowly, you are participating in an ancient agreement between the human body and the intelligence of the earth. You are saying, "And I am willing to be strengthened from the inside out." The fifth insight is about the healing power of smell. The olfactory system, the part of your brain that processes scent, is the only sense directly connected to the limbic system, the seat of emotion and memory, without an intermediary relay station. This is why the smell of lavender can, in an instant, return you to a moment of safety from years ago. This is why the incense burning in a monastery does more than create atmosphere. It speaks directly to the oldest parts of your nervous system, the parts that predate language and thought, and the complicated stories you tell yourself about who you are and why you suffer. The monks knew this. Every tradition within Buddhism has its own relationship to aromatic plants. Sandalwood, frankincense, aloes wood, camphor. These are not decorative. They are pharmacological. They alter brain chemistry. They reduce cortisol. They shift the quality of attention in the room. When you bring aromatic plants into your home, when you crush a sprig of rosemary between your fingers and breathe it in before meditation, when you brew a pot of peppermint tea and simply hold the cup under your nose and inhale before you drink, you are practicing a form of healing that is simultaneously ancient and scientifically verifiable. You are using the plant world as a bridge between the physical and the interior. Take a moment now and bring your awareness to your hands. Simply feel them. Feel the temperature of the air against your skin. Feel the subtle pulse in your fingertips if you can find it. These hands have touched 1,000 things today and registered almost none of them. Let them rest now. Let them remember that they too are made of the same substances as the plants, the same carbon and water and electrical impulse, and that they too are capable of being instruments of healing. The sixth insight is about impermanence and medicine. One of the most important teachings of the Buddha is anicca, impermanence, the understanding that nothing in the physical world is fixed or permanent, that everything arises, exists for a time, and passes away. This teaching is not meant to make us sad. It is meant to free us. And nowhere is this teaching more beautifully illustrated than in the plant world. A flower blooms for days, sometimes only hours. A medicinal mushroom fruits once, and then retreats back into its mycelium network, invisible again for months or years. The valerian plant that calms your nervous system at night must be harvested at exactly the right moment in its cycle, or its potency diminishes. Every plant is teaching you that timing matters, that presence matters, that the window of any given moment is open, and then it is closed, and the practice is to be there when it is open. This is why grief is not the enemy of healing. Grief is what happens when you were present enough to love something that changed. The monk who tends his garden knows that the garden will look different next week, next season, next year. He does not fight this. He attends to it. There is a profound difference between those two words, fighting and attending. One exhausts you, the other nourishes you. The seventh insight is about community as medicine. In Tibetan medicine, the most sophisticated plant remedies are not single herbs, but complex formulas, sometimes containing dozens of ingredients, each one contributing something the others cannot provide alone. Tibetan monks spent generations learning which plants amplified each other, which ones balanced each other, which ones were harmful in isolation but healing in relationship. This mirrors exactly the Buddhist concept of Sangha, community, which is considered one of the three jewels of the Dharma, alongside the Buddha and the teaching itself. You are not meant to heal alone. This is not a personal failure or a weakness. It is biology. It is the design of the nervous system, which co-regulates through presence, through breath shared in the same room, through the subtle electromagnetic field of another calm body in proximity to your own. The plants know this too. A forest is not a collection of individual trees. It is a community, connected underground through fungal networks that transmit nutrients and warning signals, and even something that researchers have begun to describe cautiously as care. You are part of a network. This video is part of a network. The fact that you are here, listening, means that something in you is reaching toward connection with that larger web. That reaching is itself a form of healing. The eighth insight is about sleep and the night medicines. Buddhism has a great deal to teach about the relationship between wakefulness and sleep, between consciousness and the deep rest that restores it. The evening period in a monastery, after the final bell and before the first light, is considered sacred time, a not empty time, but a different quality of time, slower and more permeable, more open to what the day mind cannot access. The sleep herbs, valerian and passion flower and lemon balm, and the reishi mushroom that Taoist and Buddhist practitioners have called the mushroom of immortality. For over 2,000 years, these are night medicines. They work in the dark, during the hours when the body runs its deepest repairs, when the brain clears its metabolic waste, when the emotional processing that meditation begins in the day continues in the language of dreams, when you take a cup of valerian and lemon balm tea before bed, when you sit with it in your hands in a room with low light, you are not just preparing for sleep. You are creating a ritual of transition, a conscious movement from the busy, constructed self of the day into the more open and receptive self of the night. This is Dharma practice. This is the body being honored as a temple, not a machine. Close your eyes for a moment if it is safe to do so. Imagine a forest at dusk. Imagine the quality of light that filters through the leaves when the sun is low, warm and golden, making the ordinary world look briefly sacred. Imagine you can smell the earth, the dampness of moss on stone, the green sharpness of crushed leaves underfoot. Let your body remember that it knows this place, because it does. Every cell in your body is made from the same elements as that forest floor. You are not visiting nature when you enter a forest. You are returning to yourself. The ninth and final insight is perhaps the simplest and the most difficult at the same time. It is this: you are already medicine. Every Buddhist tradition, from the earliest Theravada teachings to the great Mahayana schools that spread across Asia, holds at its center the conviction that the healing we seek is not something we must acquire from the outside. It is something we must remember from the inside. The Buddha did not give Ananda a formula. He gave him a path, a way of paying attention, a practice of returning again and again to the direct experience of this moment, this breath, this body, this life as it actually is. The plants support this practice. The herbs and roots and flowers and fungi are allies, generous and patient allies, but they are pointing at something that belongs to you already. Your nervous system has the capacity to regulate itself. Your body knows how to reduce inflammation when it is not overwhelmed by chronic stress. Your mind, given the right conditions, the conditions of stillness and self-compassion and honest inquiry, has a natural tendency toward clarity. The plants help create those conditions. The practice deepens them. And the Sangha, the community of others walking this same path, makes the whole thing sustainable over time. This is why the monks in that Japanese monastery began their day with their hands in the earth. Not because the earth would give them something they lacked, but because the contact reminded them of what they already were, rooted, alive. participating in something vastly larger and more intelligent than any individual life could contain. When you sit in silence and drink your tea this morning, when you pause before a houseplant and actually look at it, when you choose a walk in the park instead of a scroll through the noise, you are doing the same thing those monks were doing. You are remembering. You are practicing the oldest medicine there is. The path is green. The path is slow. The path is already beneath your feet.